I struggled with constipation for most of my life, and for years I did everything I was told. More water, more fiber, and laxatives when things got really bad. Nothing worked, at least long term, and there's a very specific reason for that. Every solution I was given was aimed at the symptom. Nobody ever asked why my gut wasn't moving in the first place. Nobody investigated what was actually driving the problem. And that was the missing question. That gap in the investigation is exactly why nothing worked for me. And it's probably why nothing has worked for you long term either. I eventually figured out that I had 3 separate root causes contributing to my own constipation: a lack of dietary diversity, genuinely slow gut motility, and a nervous system that was stuck chronically in fight or flight. 3 different systems all contributing at the same time. And not one of them was fixed by taking a fiber supplement. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 4 root causes that most practitioners never investigate when it comes to chronic constipation and IBS-C. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why what you've tried hasn't worked and what actually needs to change for you. And before we dive in, if you want to go deeper after this video, I actually have a free training and a free quiz linked below at the top of the description. Both are designed to help you figure out exactly where your gut is breaking down and what your specific next step could be. More on those at the end, so let's get into it. If we haven't met yet, hi, I'm Erin Harner, Integrative Registered Dietitian Nutritionist, specializing in gut health and chronic constipation. I work with women who have been dealing with constipation and IBS-C for months or years, many of them cycling through every standard recommendation without any sort of lasting results. I developed a methodology called the Gut Rhythm Method specifically to address what conventional approaches miss. This video is the foundation of that work. Let me start with the 3 things that you've almost certainly been told if you've struggled with constipation for any amount of time. Eat more fiber, drink more water, and if things get bad enough, take a laxative. And here's what I want to say about all 3 of those. They are not wrong exactly. Fiber, hydration, and short-term bowel relief all have their place, but they're surface level responses to a symptom. None of them ask the question that actually matters here. Why is your gut not moving on its own? When you answer a symptom without asking why it's there, you get one of 2 outcomes. You could get temporary relief that eventually wears off, which is why you're still having this conversation with me here, or you make things worse, which also may be why you're here. Chronic constipation and IBS-C are not a fiber deficiency. They are not a water deficiency. They are multi-system challenges that require a completely different framework to solve. And that framework starts with understanding what actually is driving the problem in the first place. I'm going to walk you through 4 root cause categories, and for each one, I want you to notice that these are things that most practitioners never investigate. Not because they aren't real, but because the conventional medicine system isn't set up to look for them. Here's what I found in my over 20 years of work in this area. Most women with chronic constipation and IBS-C have something happening in more than one of these categories simultaneously. That's exactly why single fixes don't work. You can't just resolve one piece while the others are still actively driving the problem. Let's go through all 4 of these. Let's start with root category number 1, and I call this the physical foundation. This is where fiber, hydration, and movement really live. And this is the one most practitioners do address, but not always completely. Yes, fiber matters. It supports motility, it feeds your gut microbiome, but there's what I call the fiber paradox. And I have another whole video on this, so be sure to check that out. But the fiber paradox is where adding more fiber to a gut that's already backed up or inflamed actually makes things worse, not better. It's like adding more cars to a highway that's already at a complete standstill. The type of fiber, the amount, and the sequence matter tremendously. Eat more fiber is not a complete sentence. And for women with IBS-C, it actively makes things worse more often than not. Hydration also really matters. Your stool needs water to move through, but drinking more water doesn't solve a motility problem. If your gut isn't contracting properly all along, water alone doesn't actually change the signal. And movement is another piece that genuinely drives motility. Even a short walk after a meal stimulates the gut contractions that keep things moving, and this is super important. If you're largely sedentary, there's a real contributing factor there worth addressing. These 3 things are necessary, but here's what most practitioners miss. For women with chronic constipation and IBS-C, the physical foundation is almost never sufficient all by itself. You may have already tried doing these things, and you're still here, which means the problem probably lives in one of these other categories. Root cause number 2 is your gut ecosystem, or the terrain of your gut. And this is the one most practitioners completely miss unless they're specifically trained in functional integrative medicine. Your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria and other microorganisms living primarily in your large intestine, play a direct role in motility. When the ecosystem is balanced, it produces short-chain fatty acids that fuel the cells lining your colon and support healthy muscle contractions. When it's imbalanced, that process completely breaks down. One of the most significant and underappreciated mechanisms here is methane gas. Certain microbes in an imbalanced gut microbiome actually produce methane as a byproduct of fermentation. And methane, unlike some of the other gases, actively paralyzes the gut's peristaltic action. It stops those contractions. It slows motility. And when motility slows, more fermentation happens, more methane is produced, and the constipation gets worse, not better. And unfortunately, it's a self-reinforcing cycle that fiber and water simply can't interrupt on their own. This is what's now known as intestinal methanogen overgrowth, or IMO, previously referred to as methane predominant SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And if you have IBS-C specifically, I want to pay close attention here because IMO is disproportionately associated with IBS-C. If you've been told you have IBS-C and nothing has resolved it, this mechanism is one of the first things worth investigating. A disrupted microbiome also leads to food sensitivities, foods that you used to tolerate that now seem to cause reactions, and to increased intestinal permeability as well. These aren't separate problems. They're downstream consequences of an ecosystem that's out of balance. And one more thing in this category that almost nobody connects to constipation are medications and supplements. Opioids, antihistamines, antispasmodics, certain antidepressants, blood pressure medications, iron supplements, calcium supplements can all directly contribute to constipation. I know. If you started a new medication or supplement around the time that your constipation got worse, that timeline is actually clinically significant. It's worth a conversation with your prescribing provider about whether an alternative might be less constipating or better for your gut. Now, moving on to root cause category number 3 is structural and mechanical. And this is the one that most practitioners miss entirely because it doesn't show up on a standard colonoscopy. Your colonoscopy comes back normal and you're still constipated. This could be why. So the first place is slow transit constipation, where the gut's actual motility capacity is reduced. The muscles and nerves responsible for the wave-like contractions that move stool through your intestines aren't firing the way that they should. This is a function problem, not just a volume problem, and it requires a completely different approach than simply adding more fiber. Related to this, and something that absolutely belongs in this conversation here, is the thyroid connection. Your thyroid, right up here in your neck, regulates metabolic function throughout your entire body, including gut motility. When the thyroid is underperforming or suboptimal, which is disproportionately common in women, everything else gets low and slow. It all slows down, including your gut. Most practitioners don't investigate this because they don't connect a gut issue to a thyroid problem, but they are deeply correlated. And I actually have a full expert interview on this topic in this playlist, where my colleague and I go much deeper than I can cover here. But if you haven't had a full thyroid panel, not just TSH, but a full panel, including free T3, free T4, and reverse T3 ideally, that is a conversation worth having with your doctor. The other structural piece that's really important is pelvic floor dysfunction. And this is one that I want to name specifically for women who are straining but producing soft stool. What's going on? If the stool is there, but it's not coming out, this is not a motility problem at all. It's actually a muscular coordination problem. Sometimes what happens is the pelvic floor muscles aren't releasing properly to allow elimination. And this also doesn't show up on a colonoscopy, and it won't be solved by dietary intervention either. Cutting out more foods isn't going to fix it. I also have a full expert interview on the pelvic floor connection in this playlist. So if you've addressed everything else and you're still stuck, this may be a piece that nobody has looked at yet. And this brings us to root cause number 4 that ties everything else together. And it's the one that most practitioners never address at all. It's the nervous system and rhythm disruption. I want to start with a fact that changes everything and that most people have never actually heard. The vagus nerve is the primary communication highway between your gut and your brain. And research shows that approximately 80% of the signals traveling through the nerve between your gut and your brain go from your gut up to your brain. And only about 20% go from the brain down to the gut. Your gut is not passively waiting for instructions from your brain. Your gut is constantly reporting upward to the brain. And when your gut's backed up, inflamed, and sluggish, Those distress signals are going up to your brain, and your brain responds with fatigue, anxiety, brain fog, and low mood. It's not a surprise. It's the gut-brain connection. If you have IBS-C and you've also been dealing with exhaustion, anxiety, or brain fog alongside your digestive symptoms, that is not a coincidence, not at all. That is one system sending one signal, and no amount of fiber or water or Miralax is going to resolve and fix that signal. And here's the foundational piece of this category. Digestion runs on the parasympathetic nervous system. Rest and digest. When your body's in a stress state, in that sympathetic fight or flight state, it actively down-regulates digestive function. Everything stops working well. It redirects resources away from your gut because it's determined that something more urgent needs attention. You need to run from that lion. You need all of the blood flow in your fingers, in your arms, in your legs so that you can run. Takes it away from the gut. And that's a problem. For acute stress, this is a normal temporary response. For chronic stress, the kind that most women with busy, full lives experience as a baseline, this becomes a chronic suppression of gut function. Your gut never fully gets the signal to do its job well. And I want to be really clear about something. I'm not telling you to eliminate stress from your life. That's just not realistic and not the point. What matters specifically for digestion is actually creating the parasympathetic conditions around eating and meal times so your gut can actually activate properly. Not all day, just during and around meals. That's achievable inside a full, busy, chaotic life. Believe me, I have 3 kids, a business, and a farm. I get it. Layered on top of the nervous system piece that's really important is circadian rhythm. Your gut runs on a biological clock. And unlike your brain's clock, which is driven by lightness and darkness, your gut's clock is actually driven by when food arrives, when you eat. Consistent meal timing creates digestive preparedness. Your gut literally starts preparing before the food arrives. It secretes enzymes, motility signals, and digestive hormones that help with everything and help everything move better. Everything works better when your gut knows when it's coming. When your eating schedule is erratic, which is the reality for most women juggling work, family, and everything else, your gut clock gets confused. It doesn't know when to be active. It doesn't know when to take a break. That confusion can show up as unpredictable, inconsistent digestion. Better some days, worse on others. Worse on the weekends, worse during travel. It's not random. It's your gut clock responding to rhythm disruption. And this right here, this is the root cause that most practitioners never investigate. And it's the one that, when addressed, changes everything. And when I look across all 4 of those root cause categories, the physical foundation, the gut ecosystem, the structural and mechanical, and the nervous system and rhythm disruption, one pattern becomes undeniable. Every single category at its core is a disruption of the body's natural rhythms. The microbiome's rhythmic balance, the mechanical rhythm of peristalsis moving through the GI tract, the nervous system's rhythm between activation and rest, the circadian rhythm of eating and digestion. This is not a coincidence. This is the pattern I kept seeing over and over again in my clinical work with every woman who came to me after years of trying the standard approaches and getting nowhere. And it's what led me to develop the gut rhythm method, the methodology I use with my clients inside my program, the Gut Rhythm Reset. The premise is this: function follows rhythm. Your gut doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be predictable. And when you restore the rhythm that supports gut function, systematically, in the right order, in a way that fits inside your real life, your gut starts doing its job again on its own without constant intervention, without constantly thinking about what to do and what comes next. And that's what healing actually looks like. Not managing one symptom at a time in isolation, restoring the underlying rhythm that allows every system to work together the way it's designed to. This video is part 1 in a series I built specifically to go deep into the root causes of chronic constipation and IBS-C, because several of these categories deserve more than a few minutes. The next 2 videos in this playlist go deep into 2 of the most commonly missed root causes I see in clinical practice. Part 2 is the thyroid and constipation connection, a full expert interview that connects what to test, how thyroid function impacts motility, and what to do about it. Part 3 is a pelvic floor and constipation connection, another expert conversation covering how to know if this is part of your picture and what treatment actually looks like. Both are in the playlist linked in the description. If this video put together some dots for you, those 2 videos are your natural next step. And if you want to understand specifically which of these 4 root cause categories is most relevant for your gut right now, I have 2 free resources to help you figure it out. The first is my free training called Still Bloated and Backed Up. It walks through the 3 gut rhythm mistakes I see most common in women who are struggling with chronic constipation and IBS-C and exactly what to do about them. This is the best place to start if you want a clear picture of what is keeping you stuck. The link is at the top of the description. The second is my gut clarity quiz. It's a super quick 2-minute assessment designed to identify where your specific rhythm is breaking down and what your next best step should actually be. Also linked right below the training in the description. And after either one, if working together feels like the right next step, you can book a gut clarity call with me to talk through a personalized plan and what that looks like for you. If this video finally gave you a framework for something you've been trying to understand for years, give it a like. It genuinely helps more women with chronic constipation and IBS-C find this content. And if you know someone who's been told to just eat more fiber and drink more water and is still really struggling, send them this video. It could be exactly what helps them finally understand what's going on and what their best next step should be. Part 2 of this series is next. It's already in the playlist waiting for you.